Well, welcome. We are recording, so welcome live from the Shakespeare Museum. Well, it's not quite Saturday, it's Thursday afternoon, but we're here with Cem Sunata, and Cem is the registrar for Cal Poly, and we're very lucky to have him here to participate in our celebrity interview with the instructional department heads and chairs. And Cem, I want to say welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
having me.
All right, so we've got several people here, or I guess we go more than several, right? The more esteemed and dedicated IDHC heads and chairs here. So I'm going to ask the audience to participate at a certain point. I've got some preliminary questions I've already shared with Cem that to sort of prepare them for this experience. So we're going to start off with a little bit of what I hope is an easy question for you, but
yeah.
So we always just sort of assume that we know who these, I'm going to say, mucky-mucks or big shots are at Cal Poly. So I include you in the big shot category. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, so people sort of get to know, who you are, where you come from.
Sure.
What's that about?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you guys. So I'm originally from Turkey, and some of you guys know this, some of you may not. But I actually came to the States when I was.
So it's better if you probably talk to me.
Oh, okay.
So something sort of the production, right? Like for now, pretend those guys aren't there.
You
right?
got it. You got
so
it.
You're not doing a presentation. We're doing
the executive producer didn't tell me that.
Think of me as like Charlie Rose.
All right, Charlie Rose.
Okay.
I love it. All right.
Go ahead.
So I'm originally from Turkey, and I came to the States when I was 20 years old. I was actually a transfer student from another university in Turkey. And I started as a metallurgical engineer in Turkey, which I really didn't like. And
for no good reason.
Yeah, and then I kind of I switched to computer engineering, and so I graduated as a computer engineer, and I got my master's degree as an electrical engineer. And in Vegas, where I went to school and I lived for 18 years, it's really hard to find a job as an engineer. So when I interviewed, and my wife finally told me that, okay, you have to finish graduate school, you got to get a job because I don't want to work anymore. I found a job in a gaming corporation.
Okay.
And the other interview was at UNLV as a programmer / assistant registrar.
Okay.
And I ended up getting both offers.
All right.
One of them led to assembly programming slot machines.
Okay.
The other was in education, and so I took the education route. And
was that a good decision for you?
It was, and I'll tell you why. I found out years later, the person whom I was working with, who got hired after I did, ended up being the ex-wife of the guy who interviewed me at the gaming corporation. And she told me that 10 people were fired about a year after I was interviewed.
Oh, wow.
And it went in seniority order, which I would have been canned. Yeah. And then her ex-husband the guy who interviewed me, my boss,
right, a
potential boss, he got fired a year after that. So I was really glad I took the education.
Okay. All right. Good choice. And we're glad too, by the way.
Thank you.
And I want to sort of remind our studio audience, I got some leading questions for Cem, but be thinking about some of the questions that you're going to ask so we can kind of get the information we need. And by the way, so Cem is demonstrating one of the advantages to coming to an IDHC meeting. And we don't often advertise, the wine content, at these meetings, but it tends to improve the communication value, I think, within the community. So Cem, now I got sort of a leading question for you. So Cal Poly, has some big challenges going forward. Like, what do you think maybe the top 2 or 3 challenges are for Cal Poly from your perspective as the registrar?
Right. So that's actually a very important question, and the answer to that question also is an important one. So I don't want to downplay the importance of it at all. So what I'll do is I'll preface it by saying that I'm kind of asking it from my perspective as the registrar, and that by no means on behalf of the entire academic affairs or the university in general. So I thought of several things, and if I sit down and thought more about it, probably be, I don't know if this will be different, but one thing for number one, I wrote the amount of teaching faculty that is necessary to deliver the curriculum as described, you know.
So when you say teaching faculty, that's broader than tenure track or adjunct faculty. This is just like the total number of people that teach classes at Cal Poly.
No,
I should differentiate, or do you think?
No, I should be probably more specific. What I mean is that I think that we've seen a huge increase in the lectures at Cal Poly in the last several years, right? And lectures come, lectures go. You know, some of them are very, very dependable, and we're lucky enough to have good people in this area, but sometimes you can't depend on them. Right. I'm talking more of a probably tenure track, ideally speaking, right? To not only become the research teaching institution that we want to be, but also to be able to deliver the amount of curriculum that for the amount of students we admit into programs. Some of these programs want to grow, but they can't because they cannot meet the demands, and you know, some of them, you know, can. I don't know. Anyway, so that's I wrote that as the kind of the number one challenge. And the second thing is, let me see. Let me refer to my notes because I did notes.
I got my notes here. So
yes, I took notes. I wrote. I don't know what kind of flag I'm going to get for this, but I said,
"You're among friends, except for the people we're going to send this video to."
Exactly. Then all bets are off.
Yeah, exactly.
I wrote, being able to set priorities at the department level in order first to respond to the course demand from students. So I think, you know, departments, and I know this firsthand that, you know, faculty and departments have a lot of priorities, have a lot of things that they struggle and they juggle, a lot of plates in the air. But when not being able to meet the course demands from the students whom we admit becomes an issue, then I think that needs to be solved first.
Right.
And that's a complicated matter. I recognize that. But I think that, you know, when you talk to individual departments, they have a pretty good idea as to what needs to be done to solve that problem. Third one, I wrote down space.
Yeah.
Space is, from my perspective, is a big problem.
Yeah.
We have, you know, a limited number of general purpose classrooms on this campus.
Hey, I just want to, you know, point out, I heard something from our studio audience before we started this, that Ken sometimes brings in 100 students into this room.
I do.
Right? So
we all stand and crowd.
Yeah, well, you stand in crowd.
And it's not for very long.
Yeah, okay. So
anyway, this room.
This room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and we'll, you know, maybe we can later on pan the room so people can see what we're talking about. But there's a lot of printing presses and things in here. I don't know how they fit that 100 people in here.
I know. A lot of breakers.
But anyway, yeah. So space. Yeah.
Space is a big problem, and there is a culture at Cal Poly where when people think of general purpose classrooms or adding more teaching space, they don't think of dedicated buildings to classrooms or auditoriums. Mm-hmm. They think of, well, if we build a building for this college, we'll allocate a portion of it to teaching space kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know to what extent that we can sustain that kind of mentality. Right. I know that from my previous institution that problem was almost fundamentally solved by the president's push, so much so that our previous president, you know, her name was given to the building. It was the Carroll Harder building complex. Right. It was composed of all classrooms, the building, and one building, and the other building adjacent to it was all about auditoriums, and another one all faculty space kind of thing. That solved a lot of problems.
Well, you know, it's interesting because there is definitely a mentality, and we've had some real success stories with like the science and math people, you know, with a great building for science and math, but it's a shared space, so like one big building where we can just maximize the teaching capability.
Yeah, for general purpose classrooms, at least, general education, you know, lower level 100, 200 level classes. There's a huge need for auditoriums. The silo is in huge demand, as you know.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, and I know that I have to come up with 3, but I come up with a 4th one.
That's okay. You're the guest.
So fourth one, I said advising. Because advising before was in nobody's, well, I shouldn't say that, that would be unfair to say, but in higher education in the United States in general was not in many people's radar.
Right, right.
But I think that it's becoming more and more apparent as the budgets, state budgets are kind of turning from how many people you admit to how many people you actually successfully graduate,
Right, right.
the funding formulas, then advising becomes a factor and more important of a factor. And we currently have in Cal Poly a decentralized advising model that works to a certain extent, but when it comes to larger initiatives or more important policy issues or to be able to be consistent in the things that we do,
Right.
it breaks down that formula. So currently that's a challenge that we're kind of dealing with, but thankfully we have really good people in place. So, and we have wonderful faculty. And so I'm hopeful about the future of advising at Cal Poly.
Okay, super. Well, thank you for that. I guess the other thing, and I'm going to then sort of after this question, I'm going to turn it over to our audience to challenge you a little bit. But the thing that I was sort of thinking about is so we got some department heads and chairs, and that will be sort of our primary distribution for this video and the people that we're talking about here. But what do they need to know about, you know, the challenges at the registrar's office or the things that you're trying to do that we can either help or, you know, participate in, or should I say we should stop you now before you know, go too far, right? Or whatever. But
No, don't stop.
don't stop. Yeah, well, we're trying, you know, we want to be positive. But.
Okay. So the one thing that I actually been trying to really campaign for and spread, because this kind of initiative really does require a more hands-on personal approach, because it's about changing the culture. It was around Poly Planner. So we've actually adopted this system. The thoughts or the concept, the idea isn't actually all that of a new thing.
Right.
But the fact that we've actually went ahead and implemented as a mandatory system,
Right.
institution-wide,
Yeah.
is the first of its kind in the United States. And we've actually got a lot of attention for that too, from other institutions in the East, in the West, in the Midwest, wherever. And what I really would love to see is, and actually one of my personal heroes in this endeavor is sitting right in the front over here, because Al has been really—
This is Al Estes.
Al Estes, exactly, architectural engineering. Because when I push a software like this to the student body, when I did it, in an institution where the primary student concern was class availability from the students.
Right.
And I told them that I'm giving you the ability to tell faculty what you would like to take and when.
Right.
It just did not register.
You know, they kind of foreign to them.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, why should I do this? It's some extra thing that I have to do. Yet then they turn around during registration time saying that, you know, I'm crashing classes and doing this. I can't get enough units. But it's an entirely different thing. A department chair sending out a communication to their students saying that I, as your department chair, would like you to do this, because that's how I'm going to plan my offerings to the extent possible. It's not a guarantee, because there are other factors that determines what courses I can offer, what, you know, sabbaticals, opportunities, travels, whatever. But it is going to really help me gauge the demand. Not only that, but also if my department is at a point where I cannot meet the demand, then actually I have data to take to my administration to say that this is happening over and over again, and here's the data, right? This is my pitch for more resources in my department, because I need to be able to teach these kids.
So I just want to share with you, you know, a little bit of my personal experience, and I'm going to propose to you that you've been, you know, pretty successful with your transformation, and getting that change implemented in the cultural side. Because now I don't know how many calls I've been fielding from students that say, "Hey, Professor Olson, you know, I really need to take this class in the fall because, 3 years from now, I'm not going to graduate unless I get this class, right? And I'm thinking, wow, that's
a good argument, huh?
well, and I know it, but by the way, a lot of things are going to happen, right? And this fall, I know you think it's super critical because you did your poly planner, and it's great that you're doing that. Yeah. But it's starting to create that wave of pressure, on the department chairs. And I can choose whether I respond, or I got reasons why I do or I don't. But the mentality's changing.
Not only that, but to be perfectly honest with you, I've been here for 8 years, and in 8 years we've done certain things. And in the absolute forefront, and everything that we did was two principles: was to get the communication between the students and the faculty or advisor going or happening if it wasn't happening before, and the second was transparency. Yeah. Transparency to the student, transparency to the faculty, transparency to the administration, because it's not like any one of us have any bad intentions or motives, right? Students want to graduate. You guys want to teach. Administration wants to run a successful university. Right. If we can get the problems to the surface, I think this is the perfect university. Yeah. Who's more than capable in solving them. Right. Unlike, I should say, maybe an R1 out there, whose priority is not exactly teaching, but doing research and getting, grants or whatever.
It kind of leverages our strength, right? Or that's the field we ought to be playing in.
Absolutely. So, absolutely.
Good. Well, I'm gonna turn to our audience now, and in order to get some really good questions for Cem, I'm going to ask that we spend. I'm going to get my timer out because I'm a lean guy. I do a lot of timer sort of things, right? And I'm going to say I'm going to give you guys 60 seconds to sort of think about a question for Cem, and then turn to your neighbor or something. I'm going to say turn to neighbor. You got to vet this question with somebody next to you. And so I want you in like pairs or threes to figure out a good question, and then we'll go ahead and sort of take them after that. Okay, so I think we're back and we're recording now. So now hopefully we got some really good vetted questions. So who wants to be the first one to ask Cem a question? And you can speak loudly, and then I think this will be good enough. The acoustics in here are excellent. Should be good enough to pick it up, but if it's not, we'll sort of repeat the question a little bit. But go ahead.
I'll ask
Cyrus, go ahead.
Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate not just you coming here, but all the guidance we get from you by your email and your system you put in place. For old timers like me, that this is my 20th year here. It's remarkable, and I was a chair for 9 years before everything.
So I want the audience to make sure you know. So Cyrus is an old timer. Okay, go keep on going.
So here's the question. So I'm perfectly in tune with the idea that we need to be transparent, and the information to pass to the information, maybe pass to the students, is very valuable for them to plan their schedule. There's a couple of issues that I wanted to bring to your attention. One is that there are courses that have not been offered for a very long time. Mm-hmm. They're in the catalog, and students read the subject line and think that's an interesting class. It's a 400 level class. I need to take some of those. And they signal that they're going to take those classes, where in fact those classes are, the probability of them being offered is 0. Mm-hmm. And it may be useful to tell them that probability sometimes, or at least indicate when it was that the last time this course was offered, mm-hmm. so that they have a sense of how likely it is to be available to them.
Sure. So the question is probabilistic course offerings. What's your?
Okay. So I'm not a fan of probability as much. So I like certainties. So to that end, actually, we've done 2 things before we even began on releasing Poly Planner to address that particular issue you're talking about. We have gone to the academic senate and asked for a resolution around expiring classes who haven't been offered X amount of years.
Yes, deactivating.
Deactivating. So, and we worked on that. The first iteration of that was a huge one because it cleaned up a lot of classes.
Yes.
The other classes that the faculty wanted to hold on to, they had to offer it every so often in order for them to not to be deactivated.
Yes.
Then the second thing, so that was our effort to keep the catalog, the course catalog, as fresh as possible, as fresh as faculty wanted it to be. Kind of thing. The second effort was when I first pitched the idea of polyplanner, the number one concern that came from faculty, regardless of the college, was what if a student demands to take a course or is interested in taking a course in a term that I do not typically offer it? Then you're going to put me at odds with the students. So that, you know, perfectly valid point. We then went back to the company and we pushed for a feature that said we want to be able to put in for every course into our catalog which terms are typically offered. And we want to then pass that information to the student while they're planning. And if a student accidentally, without looking at that information in the course description, because it is now imported from the catalog in the polyplanner and it's visible, if they plan a course in a term that is not typically offered, a warning comes up saying that, you know, with an exclamation mark, this course is typically not offered during this term. Are you sure you want to plan it that way? Kind of thing. So those are our measures.
Thank you.
Towards that.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
And the follow-up is, okay, so, and this is not transparent to me as a planner, scheduler. So I put down, I'm going to take this course next fall. And I'm crashing courses. And my buddies are taking this course this term. The one that I plan to take it 3 terms from now. And I go and take it. I go in, I get a permission number or whatever, and I'm in the course. How does that information get updated in the system?
How does
So plan versus actual, how does that reconcile?
Right. So if I had said I'm taking business 100 3 terms from now.
I would like to.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I have it in my poly planner and I've signaled I'm going to take it there.
Mm-hmm.
But now this term, like I said, my buddies are taking it, you know, it's a great professor, easy professor, I'm going to get an A, whatever. And I got a permission number, I got to take in that class. How quickly this information gets updated, the fact that I expressed the desire to take a class and I actually took it off my desired date, or does it?
Okay, so you're saying that the students plan something and then they go against that plan. Is that what you're saying? Okay, so the system can only work as well as the people who use it, right? And when we tell students that we're getting, the departments are getting ready to create the class schedule, enter the class schedule for this future term.
Yes.
So you have to enter your demand by that time so that we can pass on the information to the schedulers in that department.
Yes.
And they do that, right? They say, I plan to take business 100 in fall, right? And let's say that we're in the previous fall or in winter of the year before. And if the student goes against that and tries to take something else against their plan, and then they have to crash the course, and then they hit difficulties, and they have problems, they have no right to complain.
Yes.
Right? Because especially if that department looked at that demand and adjusted their courses and seat offerings accordingly, right? So that's the other end of the formula. That's the other end of our communication, where we're trying to tell the students that, look, your plan has to be intentional and it has to be carefully done, right? You have to stick with your plan. I mean, there may be, you know, instances where you may fail the prerequisite or something may have changed, or you change majors, whatever. Those things are going to happen. You can't help it, right? Or your time conflicts. Time conflict is a problem that is extremely difficult to solve, right? It's an infinitely difficult mathematical problem. And those can happen. But if none of those are a factor and you still change your mind about not going out with your plan, then you don't have the right to complain.
But is it correct that the system doesn't drop you from
system is not draconian at all.
So the system doesn't say, oh, you had this plan for next fall, you're enrolled now, we drop that from your plan.
So I
say this because I had 100 students waiting for a list. We went through that list, and 40 of them had already taken the course.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, that's something you can note, as sort of feedback from heads and chairs who sort of seen these systems. How about a different question at this point? Or
different question.
sorry,
I wanted to ask
No,
another follow-up for Polly
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
If they're recoding.
Well, as long as it's a popular question.
Or redesigning. The major of which I'm a chair in is a destination major.
Yes.
And I'll pull Poly Planner data and I'm like, holy cow, why is there so much demand for this course? I only have 100 sophomores in my program. And that's because students who want to change their major are putting it in their Poly Planner. Is there some way for us to be able to identify how many are requesting it are actual majors in your program versus people who are just requesting it out of the
Yes, there are. So if you click on the number of that demand, which is in blue and underlined, it actually takes you to the student list.
Okay.
You can look at that list in every way you
By
want to.
major.
By major, by expected graduation date, by standing, which concentrations they have, if they have any concentrations, what colleges they're coming from. It cuts it in any way you want it to.
All the flags are there.
I'm still a novice with dashboards, so I
Yeah.
don't know that all these things are things you can.
So what is it, like year 5 or 7, you become an expert in dashboard?
Is that what it is?
Well, I'm still
I'll pace myself.
not.
Quick plug to the people who are here and to the people who are watching. If you guys want any kind of introduction to on how to use the demand dashboards, on what's there and what we can set up something and we can come to your department chair meeting or department meeting, individual lessons, anything, let us know and we'll do it.
So we have another question?
And our question had to do with.
So just letting, since we're looking at the larger audience here, just the rollout of year-long block scheduling.
Oh, block scheduling. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's up with that?
Okay. So I pitched the idea of block scheduling a few years ago. It didn't gain any traction, but graduation initiative that came from the legislature last summer brought new life to it, and now we're on track for winter 2018, provided that our IT partners can go ahead and make the necessary changes in the codes this summer. But very, very generally described, year-long block scheduling is. When we say year-long block scheduling, we're referring to winter and spring block scheduling of the first-time freshmen because they already get fall.
Yeah.
But winter and spring are different in the sense that for fall, we give them major sport and general education courses, and we do a lot of outreach, to be able to give them a full unit. And we're very successful. We've done it for 8-9 years now, and we have an average of 15 units or more for about 4,000 freshmen. So that's pretty successful. And for winter and spring, I've suggested that we only block schedule freshmen into their major and or sport courses as described by their department. It's not a mandatory thing. Some departments may choose to participate, some not. I know that our architecture is very interested in. I know that agriculture is interested in engineering. And we're currently in process of meeting with each department and talking to the scheduler and the department chair to see which courses they would like to, have their freshmen take. Again, the idea is to actually get the freshmen go through their sequences in their freshman year so that they can go into the sophomore year with some momentum.
Right.
And that as sophomores, they're not preying upon freshman classes because they failed to take it in freshman year, which causes that.
Right. There's a
bubble
cascading
right now.
effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Good question.
Thank you.
Other questions from?
Can I get a follow-up to the block schedule?
Follow-ups,
Because
yes.
There's, I think we can all definitely see the merit of the efficiency of going to year-long block scheduling for first-year freshmen. But you've been doing this for a long time. What are the downsides when we're looking at the developmental process of our students by basically keeping them out of that equation of being engaged in their academic pursuits because we've got a machine that's doing it for them.
Sure.
So what's the downside?
That's a good question. That came up from the very beginning. So And let me argue that I don't necessarily see any major downside, even from a developmental perspective, because even when we give our students their fall schedule in summer, sometime in August, the freshmen, incoming freshmen, are giving their schedules. And then during the open enrollment period for freshmen, they have a chance to update that schedule. Now, we tell them not to update the schedule unless they talk to an advisor, because that's a very well thought through schedule that was built for them. In winter, they'll still have to go in and add classes in order to be able to get a full schedule. So they'll have to go through that exercise. Same thing in spring. Now, everything being equal, in other words, if we were in an institution in which freshmen was not having such a hard time in trying to get into the classes, I would understand that the developmental nature of trying to figure out your own schedule would carry some value. But in the face of our freshmen not being able to get into classes and going into the sophomore year, still trying to take freshman classes, makes that issue much more moot, right? So it's, you know, pick the devil, the lesser devil kind of thing, if that makes sense. And they still have, you know, 3 years, well, if you look at our graduation rates, sometimes 5 years, 4 or 5 years, to do that planning, to take the initiative, and then I must also point out that even for winter and spring block scheduling, the students will get a chance to update their schedules if they have a time conflict, or if for any reason that they may be necessary. But at least we'll give them an opportunity to take the classes that they need to take to do degree progress. So.
Good. Other questions? Not Cyrus again. Oh, Al.
I've got one. We've talked about this before, Jim, is that right now the students are required to plan 2 quarters out before the draconian punishment comes in, which is good. But the lead times for scheduling classes are such that we are having to put the classes into the schedule 3 quarters out. And so while we are making decisions on what our demand is, we're making it prior to the point that the students have given us the data. And so ideally, we need them to go out 1 more quarter in order to have the data when we're having to make the decisions. Is there any possibility to get them to go out 1 more quarter? And I know it's a challenge because it's hard enough to get them this far.
Yeah.
So before you answer that, I just want to make sure that on the table is some lean thinking about, like, why do we have to plan out, 3 quarters in advance? Couldn't we sort of pull that in? But, if that's not possible, well, let's answer Al's question.
Okay. So actually, the deadline that you mentioned, Al, has to do with when we are telling the Cal Poly schedulers that we're getting ready to open up a term for them to enter the classes. So that's the deadline that we tell the students has to do with that deadline. So by that deadline, now you may know exactly what you're going to be offering in fall, winter, and spring of 2017-18 academic year. You may know that, right? But we're only telling you that you can go in and enter that class schedule 1 term at a time. Even though you know the future terms, right? You're not able to enter the future terms yet because you're only entering fall. Before you enter the fall information, before you ideally decide where you're going to be teaching in fall, that's when we're trying to gather the full demand information from the student and pass it on. Now, having said that, the good news is, I'm out of time.
Well, that was 15 minutes of Q&A, so I just wanted to.
Okay.
We'll probably have to wrap it up in like 5 minutes, otherwise nobody's ever going to watch this video.
Just so you know, right? All right. With the last 2 incoming freshman class, we saw a huge increase in the number of students who are actually planning the entire 4 years. So the incoming students, upon getting educated by us, doing a really good job at that. And I think that we're going towards a culture where almost all of our students are going to be scheduling their 4 years and adjust as they go along. So you will get that information naturally. But I also would like to point out that there are some departments who actually really do not care about getting an entire academic year's schedule. And, you know, in the case that I ask that, I may get pushback from those departments. So whenever something like that happens in my world, I actually ask the faculty to say, usually, look, the students actually listen to you more carefully than listen to me anyway, right? If you tell the architectural engineers that, hey, I actually would, which you actually have done this, you know, from the very beginning, I would actually like you to give me the entire academic year's demand information. That's what I want you to do. If I remember this correctly, Al actually got every one of his students into a computer lab and had them do it over there. And I tell the story every single time I talk about poly planners.
So this is all 3 students?
Hey, they're architecturally engineering your building, so you might find it nicer.
Okay.
Anyway, so I think that, but that's something that I'm actually watching, how the demand is going on. So we're currently building the dashboards around examining the demand information, which is something we have not done before. So I think it's going to be useful.
Because it's a wonderful system, and you can access anything on it, names, everything. It's just that if they could plan out a little further. And we've done a workaround, which I would encourage others to do too. But if there's a way to, you know, make every student go all the way to graduation, just as an exercise as a freshman, it would probably, it helps not only in the planning of the classes, but we also have to do an annual budget projection. And because our budget is 95% personnel, having a year's worth of class demand is important for planning out how much money we're going to ask.
Yeah, and just really quick plug, there's an effort going on at Cal Poly right now called Reimagining the First Year, which we're a consortium of about 40 universities nationwide. And one of the ideas is to actually have a first year experience class in which issues like this, you know, planning your education, what is a general education class, you know, what is a major class, support class, concentrations, you know, the vernacular of higher education and communicated to students so they can understand is being imagined right now. So that would be a perfect opportunity to do something like that in a class like that. But again, it's going to take time for us to get it through, even if it goes through the curriculum.
So I'm gonna, you know, just sort of, because I sort of know that, you know, people hardly watch, you know, 3-minute videos.
This is a good question, though.
No, well, it's a good question. Well, let me go ahead, and I'm gonna ask, you know, Jen sort of, you know, came over to the College of Business this week, right?
Yes.
Right, and sort of talked to us a little bit about some changes he was planning to the waitlist policy.
Right.
And I wanted him to maybe sort of share that with you guys, and then we'll kind of go to
Sure.
the Cyrus question. But this is your commercial part.
Commercial part, yes.
So,
paid advertisement.
Yeah.
What I am proposing, and I'm spending a spring term to gather input about this, is to, as you know right now, students need a permission number to add classes, whether there's room in the class or not. What I'm proposing is that we actually get rid of that system, in which if there's room in the class, and if the student meets the prerequisites, that student can add themselves into the class.
During the first 10 days.
Well, our add and drop period is actually 8 days long.
Right.
And the length of that, I have no feeling one way or the other. We know that in the second week of classes, there's very, very few add activity going on. So we can even limit it to the first 5 days. That in the first 5 days, you can add yourself in the class. In the next 3 days, that until the add and drop period, you can get a permission number kind of thing. So this conversation, this is the basic, the concept. But this conversation inevitably goes towards the waitlisting phenomenon, because the waitlisting is what makes and breaks things. And the idea about that is that currently we freeze the wait lists on Thursday before classes begin, and we provide them to you, and then you do what you will with them, as far as letting the students in the class, or you don't let the students in the class. What I propose is that we actually run the wait lists through Sunday before the classes begin. And on Monday, as of Monday, our first day of classes, we completely get rid of them, abolish them. And then from that point on is whomever gets into the open seat gets in. Now, I actually, to make sure that I did not if people understand, I did not invent this necessarily in my head. I actually did a survey across all CUCs and CSUs. First, I looked at how long is their add and drop period is. And the second, I looked at whether they use wait lists and how they use them. And whether they let students add themselves in the classes during the add and drop period, or they give permission numbers. There is among all the UCs and CSUs, apart from us, there's only Cal Poly Pomona, who is our offshoot, and Cal Maritime, who is a military institution that requires permission numbers for students to add. Every other UC and CSU lets students add themselves into an open seat, provided that they meet the prerequisites. And now the waitlisting phenomena is different at everywhere, because more than 50% of the institutions in California let the waitlists run throughout add and drop period. I propose that we do not do that, because the thing with us is that there are so many people in the wait list, and they add themselves in, but by the time the first week comes, they pretty much finalize their enrollment, apart from the courses that they want to kind of get into, whether they may or may not be in the wait list for that, but they forget that they're in the wait list, or they don't get themselves out of the wait list. And if the wait list will run, we're going to be putting a whole bunch of bodies in the classes that do not intend to be there. And then that not only going to create a lot of problems for the instructors, but also create a lot of appeals to be dropped off the class. You know, the class. It's best to leave it to the students to decide whether they want to get in or not. Now, I heard some concerns about this, about, well, what happens to those students in the wait list and their first and second and third? They could not get in by the first day of classes. Now the wait lists are abolished and are purged, and but another student jumped into a seat before they did on Monday, right? Now, a couple of things. One is that this waitlist, this entire permission issue phenomena is dating back to a registration time where we had this rotations. You can be a graduating senior, but on the 12th rotation on your last quarter, right? That's not the case anymore. If you're a graduating senior, you're going first anyway. So you have first dibs on that class that you want to get into, right? And so on and so forth. The more degree progress you have, the earlier you go in. So that really should not be as much of a problem right now. And the other thing is that if another student gets into that class before you do, that's what is really happening in every institution. And those institutions are not even using as sophisticated of registration rotations as we do, right? And we're talking about 10 UCs, only 2 of which are semester, by the way. And every single one of them almost have better graduation rates than we do, right? So they're doing something right. But anyway, so this is just my pitch and information gathering time. But thank you for letting me share this in the.
So Cem, we're going to certainly invite you to hang around, maybe have another glass of wine or something like that in a more sort of relaxed conversational setting. Is there anything else more we need to get on the video? We want to get him on the record saying something. Somebody want to?
I have one last.
Okay.
We hear that there's going to be excess demand in terms of number of entry freshmen next year. And so the questions, and I think that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. So this is the admission overshoot. Did you have any kind of parting words of wisdom on the sort of whole overshoot thing? Like, what are you guys going to do? Boy, I'm worried.
So if I say anything admission related and I'm recorded and Jim Marilia sees this, I'm a dead man. So but I can say that I know, as far as I know, the official CERN numbers did not come out yet from admissions. Is that correct? I mean, I didn't get them. Once they come out, then from our perspective, we actually adjust the block scheduling numbers accordingly. We started getting some concerned phone calls from College of Business and some other colleges about, hey, these numbers seem pretty large. We would like to make changes, but we said, okay, please wait, because we want to wait the final CERN numbers coming out from the admissions office, and then we can act on them. But let me tell you this may be a good opportunity for year-long block scheduling, because especially if we get this bubble, in order this bubble not to propagate in a destructive manner, year-long block scheduling can really help.
Yeah.
Because it may really give us the heads up that we need in order to offer the courses that we need. You know, especially if you're doing winter and spring block scheduling for your department, and that the administration knows that for some freak accident, we ended up getting more students than we intended to, right? That's all the more reason for them to be able to try to give you the resources necessary for you to accommodate them. So, you know, and
Thank
again,
you for taking that question.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I
And,
really appreciate it.
Hopefully this wasn't too painful for you.
Not at all. It was very, very fun.
Okay, all right, good deal. Hopefully we'll get you back here in the celebrity rotation in a year or two.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
If I'm
okay.
still around.
If you're still around. All right, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.